Hello and welcome to the channel. My name is Annalisa and I am depressed again. I've just had a bit of a big stressor come into my life, and if things go well with it, you will be hearing about it on the art channel in about a month. If things don't go well, I'll maybe just do a little explain it in an aside in a video at some point. It's very stressful and that is not going great with my mental health. So I'm coping by reading a lot of romances, like I do, and so I'm going to be telling you about the books that I've read in the first half of this month, but that will include a few things other than romances because I forgot to tell you about 2 books in my last month wrap-up, and managed to read 2 non-romancy things this month. Oh, and also a manga, which I read during a day when I felt really bad and just wanted to lay on my bed all day. And this was not very cheering because we happened to be at a part of the story. This is the 14th volume of the Ancient Magus Bride, which is one of my favorite mangas. It's set in England and has a lot of English and Celtic lore and magic because it's a fantasy series. This manga has a lot of creepy, icky magic throughout it, but this particular volume had a lot of that, which wasn't particularly helpful in cheering me up, but I did like spending time with the characters some more. Then picking up from where I left off last month, I read Pretending She's Mine by Mia Sosa. This is the second book in the Love on Cue series, which I read the first and third of in whatever month the last one was, April. And this is about the sister of the hero from the first book and the best friend of that hero having a romance between them and the complications of those relationships, because the best friend is also the agent, because the hero from the first book is an actor. And it includes the fake dating trope because there's a family reunion and the sister doesn't want to go without a boyfriend because people will all ask about her love life, which, yeah. And it also has the only one bed trope because they are put in a room together for the family reunion. And overall it was pretty good. I still like the third in the series the best, but I think I might have liked this second one better than the first, so it progressively gets better as the series goes on. Then I reread 2 books by Lisa Kleypas, Devil's Daughter and Chasing Cassandra, which are historical romances set in the late 1800s, maybe the 70s or 80s, and they're really, really good. They are the 5th and 6th book in the Ravenel series, and in the first or second series that this author wrote, she did a really terrible job with consent, but in this entire like 3rd or 4th series of the Ravenels, she's done a really good job, so I think she like learned more about it and corrected herself. So I really like how consent is handled in this whole series, and these are just really sweet ones. Devil's Daughter has the single parent trope, is just really sweet and cute. The heroine is a mother of 2 whose husband has died, and she's the lady of a manor, and the hero is the brother of a gentleman, so he's like from her social class, but he is mainly an estate manager, and so he does a lot of farm work himself and knows a lot about estate managing, and she needs help with managing her estate, so they get together over that and also bond over how sweet he is with her kids, and I love that. And then Chasing Cassandra is all about a very heart locked down genius trope, if that's a thing, for the hero, where he has tons of money and he is an engineer and also runs a big railroad empire, where he not only owns the railroads and the trains, but also the people who make the trains and the people who make the railroads and the people who make steel. He's very closed off emotionally because he had one father abandon him, and then a father figure came into his life and didn't show him a decent amount of affection. Then we have Cassandra, the heroine, who is a very open and loving person because she had bad parents but very good sisters who took care of her and showed her how to love. there's also a child involved in this, and just the way that these two managed to communicate with each other when they had, especially he had, a really hard time communicating with other people, but they found a language to share, was really special to me. Then I read The Wrong Mr. Darcy by Evelyn Lozada with Holly Lorenz, and I don't know what "with" means in the context of co-writers. Like, sometimes they say this person and this person, so I don't know what "with" means when it's different from "and." But anyway, this one it's kind of cast as a Pride and Prejudice retelling, when in all honesty, a few of the names are based on people from Pride and Prejudice and some of their like places in relation to each other, but the personalities are not anything like any of the people from Pride and Prejudice, except maybe Caroline Bingley, and that's because in both books Miss Bingley is not characterized all that much, but the Darcy character was very not socially awkward, which is his main attraction in my opinion. It's very hard to write a Pride and Prejudice retelling in modern day because basically the whole plot is based on one talking properly to each other and not communicating very well, because you have to be very careful of societal roles, and two, women depending on men for money and to be able to live. And so trying to translate into a modern story is very difficult, so I understand why it wouldn't be totally close, but like, I don't know why the author didn't just keep the fact that she felt it was a Pride and Prejudice inspired story to herself and not copy over the names and just have it be its own standalone story, because then I wouldn't have been made uncomfortable by how much of a jerk she made the Charles Bingley character, because he's also one of my favorite characters from the original. Like, there was some misunderstandings and a little bit of awkwardness from the Darcy character, but like not nearly as much as in the original story. It went with the normal how romances are written nowadays tack of having them have sex in the middle of the story. There wasn't any kind of equivalent of that, like them telling each other they liked each other mutually in the middle of the other story. So just, I don't know why it's billed as a retelling or even anything remotely relating to that story, because it's not. You can have an enemies to lovers or a awkward don't like each other very much to lovers without it being a Pride and Prejudice retelling. But that is probably a selling point for publishers and for readers to have a retelling, so it's a marketing ploy probably, and that I always dislike those when they are misleading. Then I read a book by Sherry Thomas, A Study in Scarlet Women, which is a Sherlock retelling with a Lady Sherlock. And Sherry Thomas is the person who wrote The Magnolia Sword, and I really want to read that, but not right now because it's too much emotionally for my state of mind. But we read that from my book club for this month, so I'm really happy that that was a book I actually liked. And it was really good. Lady Sherlock is really endearing. She is the version of Sherlock that I like, which is an awkward person who has trouble with emotions and doesn't understand them in the same way as other people, but not as someone who full-on doesn't care about other people's emotions, very much not so. Because she is a woman, and this is set in the same time frame as the original Sherlock, which is like 1890s, there were a lot of societal rules for what women could and couldn't do, and they were very much in the control of their families. So the book starts off with her doing something seen as very drastic in those times to get out from the thumb of her family. And the way that she is then cast out, and how there were really minimal options for women to be employed at all, and not just be married to a man who is employed. I really liked how it was shown that that's really difficult. She depended a lot on other women, and I liked seeing how how that relationship developed, because we get introduced to a Watson, and I really love the Watson character. The inspector character who she partners with to solve crimes. I like that inspector character. The go-between between her and the inspector, who is a Lord Ingram, confused me, and I am kind of looking forward to how his character develops and whether he's going to be important in future books or not. But I really liked the clues and how they were found out and the tests that were done, because sometimes private investigator stories can feel really jump from topic to topic, and a lot of happenstance has to happen in order for people to get the clues they're looking for. But in this one, it really felt like more of a police procedural, where you get all these different bits of evidence from different areas, and eventually it makes a picture instead of following a clue that leads you to a clue that leads you to a clue. I like that format a lot better. So then I read in like the biography at the end of that book that the Sherry Thomas is a big romance writer, which I didn't know. So then I looked at my library for her romances, and there's a whole Lady Sherlock series that I also want to read the rest of, but there's a bit of a waiting list and it takes a bit more brain power than a romance. So I looked at her romances, and there's not a bunch of them available from my library, but I found a few. And since I really liked her one book, I thought I might like these others. So the first one I read was The Luckiest Lady in London, which is about a hero who has locked away his emotions because he had a bad childhood, and a lady who is in need of a husband to take care of her and at least two of her sisters, because one of her sisters is epileptic and needs someone with her all the time to help her with her seizures. So she wants to marry someone who has enough excess to take care of them. And I really like the discussion of that, and like her figuring out exactly how much someone would need and how many other relatives they might need to take care of, so she can't count on all of that money. So it's about how this rich person who has his emotions closed off just takes an interest in her, basically because she sees through his perfect facade and can see that he's faking being a nice person, and he appreciates somebody being able to see that, and it goes from there. And something that I noticed in both this and the other book of hers that I read that I'll tell you about is that in a lot of romances that I read, the people have a lot of misunderstandings and difficulties between them, but neither of them actually does anything to actively harm the other person or to, doesn't really do anything super bad. They make little mistakes or say something stupid or bad, but nothing huge. But in both of these books by her, the hero, and in some cases the heroine to an extent, do things that are actually really bad, and then have to atone and make amends for that in order for the relationship to work. So that wasn't as enjoyable because I couldn't love the characters as much, because I also had to forgive them for the bad thing they did, but they still had a lot of enjoyable aspects, and I really liked the romantic gestures that were made in this book. And for all they had some things they did that were very wrong, they were very interesting characters, and sometimes romance characters can be a bit flat. Then we have Not Quite a Husband by Sherry Thomas, and this one had very interesting characters, and I was very invested in figuring out what the heck went on with them, because it's a second chance romance where they had been married and had the marriage annulled because they were really not getting along. Figuring out what went wrong when they both clearly have so much affection for each other in the present timeline was really interesting, because in this case it was the woman who had the frozen heart who had been treated really badly as a child, mostly in a neglectful way, and so she wouldn't talk to him about her feelings, and a bit of a mess. And this one is set in India, because it's set in a time when the UK was still in control of India, and it was during an uprising, so there's actually some interesting battle in this one. But it's a very interesting, different setting than your usual English historical romances. They're usually in England. But my biggest problem with this one was that they both in the past and in the present, they keep having sex with the other person while the other person's asleep. I don't know why, but that was a huge theme of this book. Like, it wasn't just a thing that happened once. Like, it was a thing that happened once in one of Lisa Kleypas's earliest books. But this was just like the whole book, that was how the sex went. No. It had me hooked enough that I kept reading it, but wouldn't really recommend this one. I don't know how long ago she wrote this one. It might also have been an early one of hers, before consent was talked about widely in Romancelandia. But anyway, the two books I forgot to review last month, one of them I listened to while I got my teeth filled, and it was quite distracting and nice, and that is Not Into the Woods. Woods and Wild? Wild and Woods. I'll find the cover and put it up, but I heard about it from Jean Bookish Thoughts because she was doing a vlog on Kindle Unlimited books, and there was a deal on Kindle Unlimited to get 2 months free. Here it's different in the UK for her, but so I signed up for the 2 months free and wanted to get as many reads as possible, so I picked out some of hers because she reads a lot of fantasies and I really like fantasy. I liked it quite a lot. It felt homey and like classic fantasy. Not classic like old, classic like from the 2000s when I was a kid. It was just really pleasant. It's set in the woods, and I like stories set in the woods, and it has really interesting magical creatures and a magic system, a really likable main character who's all about protecting her family, very cool secondary character whose story is very interesting. What else can I say about it? There are bad magical creatures coming after the main character and her family because she has something they want, and we don't know what it is. And she takes matters into her own hands and tries to summon a creature to protect her from the other creatures, and this creature is the secondary character who's really cool. The 10,000 Doors of January is a portal fantasy, and I like some portal fantasy and don't like others. The ones that I don't like are the ones where the doors close and you can't go back through, like Every Heart a Doorway. They can be really sad because you're cut off from whatever friends you made on the other side in this magical world. I like that book, Every Heart a Doorway, but it is very sad. And I didn't enjoy that aspect of the 10,000 Doors of January. There was a lot of sadness and being cut off from people. It's also about a girl set in like the, I think, late 1800s again. And so when she tries to speak up and tell people something's wrong because she's been adopted by some guy who's in a part of a secret society that's very creepy, she gets sent to an asylum, which, if you know anything about asylums at the time, they were really bad. She actually got off really lightly, but that's just where they sent women who were not cooperative or causing trouble. Yeah, there was a lot of creepiness and darkness in the story, but the idea of the many different doorways is kind of similar to the one in Every Heart a Doorway, where each world that you can go through is totally different, and they're all in these different places that are specifically suited to the worlds that they connect to. The magic system was questionable as far as the magic that the main character used. It was a bit overpowered, and it didn't make sense why she didn't use it more often or to do more complicated things. She always used it to do very simple things, and I think it could have solved things better if she had used it more in a more complicated way. But overall, it was a pretty good fantasy story. Oh, and I read Belle Revolt, which is a fantasy story with people who use magic called Midnight Arts and Noonday Arts, which are, the Noonday Arts are healing and fighting and like mechanical stuff and transformations, and the Midnight Arts are scrying and divining and illusions and, to an extent, getting inside people's brains. And girls do the midnight arts and boys do the noonday arts. Guess which one is given more precedence? Because this is a sexist society. It's also, I believe, a homophobic society, but it is a queer-friendly book. There are several people who use they them pronouns. No way of knowing if they're like non-binary or some other type of trans, but there is also another trans character and at least 2 homoromantic characters and an ace character. No, at least 4 homoromantic characters, 2 couples, and an ace character. And so that was really cool to see. It was made to sound like they were not totally accepted, like they were known about, because like the different pronouns were not questioned at all, but they weren't like totally accepted in the wider world. And I like that part. There was a conversation between the ace character and her love interest about her being ace, and I really like that. And overall, I really loved the story. It was so good. It was there's a corrupt system, not just sexist, but also super classist, and generally nasty regime ruling the country that our main characters are in. This is dual perspective with 2 ladies who switch places, and so it is about that there being already a little bit of a rebellion against the king, the evil king, and then the king doing a lot of really bad things to try to put down the rebellion, and it all coming to a crisis point. And this book put me into a funk for like 3 days because it hurt my feelings. But yeah, this is one of those that I should have looked into a little more thoroughly. I had only heard it recommended by like 1 person, and I hadn't heard a whole lot about it, so that should have been on my list of books to look up. But it has such a pretty cover, and it has ace rep, and overall it's just a really good book. Stabbed me right in the heart. I am hoping to get into some more different types of literature soon. I've started reading Braiding Sweetgrass again. I'm thinking of reading the 2 books by Anna Marie McLemore, because they're a really great author. I have 2 by them, one that I bought and one from the library, and I've heard really good things about Dark and Devious Red, and I'm excited to also read When the Moon Was Ours. But I am also somewhat wary of both of those because I think they're both could be emotional. So that's what's going on with me. I'd love to know what you've been reading this month, and generally how you're doing and how this month is going for you. What is your favorite nonfiction that you've read this year, or a nonfiction book that you are looking forward to reading? Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. How about a rainbow for our emoji today? Bye! There he is! Hello! Hello! Doing my baby boy.